Welcome to Aicimoun Light, your channel for audio stories and fanfictions. Your host Mariane Aicimoun wishes you an enjoyable time.
Chapter 1, Befriending the Malfoys. Summary. Ever since Lucius Malfoy had started mentoring Severus during his first year as a Death Eater, their relationship grew into a solid friendship with him and his wife. Lucius and Narcissus had gone out of their way to make Severus feel like a part of their family. However, as of late, he had isolated himself more and refused to set foot at the Malfoys' manor. For a reason only he knows, he hadn't even visited his godson on his birthday. Despite his choice, Severus' mind was troubled. He blames himself for abandoning the family that had come to mean a lot to him. He has difficulty focusing on his experimentations with new customized potions and starts reminiscing about the past. When did he suddenly start avoiding his friends? And what drove him away? Is it still possible to avoid the worst and mend his relationship with them? Notes. Read me note. This is a tentative opening chapter for a short fanfic novella in the making. This work is still in its infancy, and I am a baby writer myself, so I welcome any suggestions, comments, and constructive criticism. I also look for a beater to proofread my work. The future of this fanfic could turn slightly dark and more serious in tone. Feel free to share your predictions for the next chapter in the comments. Thanks, enjoy. The Lure of the White Narcissus. Befriending the Malfoys. After graduating from Hogwarts, Severus had nowhere to go other than to follow the lure of dark magic. Severus Snape joined the Death Eaters in search of kinship and belonging. Instead, he was received with disdain and bullying because of his half-blood origins. Only 1 month has passed since Severus had received his death mark, which proved he belonged under the command of the Dark Lord of the Purebloods, yet he was already feeling lonelier than ever. Severus had felt so down that he had almost given up on the human race when a certain blonde and tall wizard with aristocratic manners decided to take him under his tutelage. Lucius Malfoy had his eyes on the young potions prodigy from his days at Hogwarts and had been pleased to see him join the ranks of Lord Voldemort's servants. He had been the one who helped Severus survive the Death Eater's life and hone his skills to become a master of potions. The Malfoys were the only people that he had ever considered friends. They were the only people who had accepted him truly as he was and had given him the closest thing to a family. However, as of late, Severus had had to limit his interactions with them. The friendship they had built for more than 3 years was at risk of crumbling down, and he had no one else to blame but himself. It was up to him to deal with the aftermath of his own mistakes. However, he didn't want to lose either his mentor Lucius or his close friend Narcissus. If he wanted to save what was left of his friendship with the Malfoys, he had to be careful and do the right thing. It was a foggy morning in Wizarding England. As usual, Severus woke up early in his home at Spinner's End. He finished his daily exercises in the nearby forest. After he came back, he took a quick shower and breakfast, then settled to work on yesterday's potion. It was another experiment that the Dark Lord had ordered him to undertake. If he was successful, the potion can give anyone who consumed it heightened strength and alertness for more than a week without sleep. However, he was doing a terrible job of concentrating. The recent events had him constantly worrying. Again this morning he tried to focus solely on his job. Severus had finished chopping some ingredients on the long table in his lab and sprinkled them into the steamy cauldron in front of him. But he couldn't stop thinking all the while. He found himself reminiscing about his humble beginnings as a withdrawn young wizard whose only passion was to learn everything there is about potions. He couldn't help wondering about his fate had he not met Lucius and Narcissus, and had he not benefited from their kindness. His relationship with the Malfoys had started a little over 3 years ago. Lucius had always been kind to the young potion genius from the day he was recruited. Severus remembered how the older wizard had taken him under his wing and had given him valuable advice that saved his life more than he could count. It was Lucius who showed him the pitfalls he should avoid if he wanted to be respected and feared among the Death Eaters. It all started during his first year of service. Lucius asked the Dark Lord for his permission to train the recruit. Lord Voldemort had agreed, and Severus had accompanied Lucius like his shadow on most of his missions, since One day, they were asked to run an errand at Gringotts, and as usual, Severus was trying to follow up on the long strides of his mentor. As they walked, Lucius told him the words he would never forget. "You should always remember that being at the service of the Dark Lord is not a walk in the park," he said. "The others won't welcome you with open arms, Severus. For them, you are nothing but additional competition that they have to get rid of. You should always stay alert. Never trust anyone. Not even me." Severus stumbled and almost fell on his face as he looked at Lucius incredulously and forgot to watch where he put his feet. Lucius eyed the younger wizard sympathetically and smiled sadly at his quizzical expression. "Yes, Severus, in the Death Eater's creed, the word of the Dark Lord is the law. And no one can disobey him. If you were accused of treason, and the Dark Lord ordered your execution, no one can save you. Not even me. So be careful, watch your step, and be ready for strong and lawless competition. You should always watch your back. The only thing that can save you is to get close to the Dark Lord. You must excel in something that would please our Lord," he said. Severus walked in silence for a moment before replying, "But what if I had nothing of value to offer him? Would I be executed?" he asked, suddenly afraid for his life. His mentor stopped walking and turned to look at him. He put his hand on his shoulder and looked him in the eyes. "No. The Dark Lord needs every faithful servant he has. But remember that we are all pawns in his great, scheming mind. So every servant seeks to be more valuable than others to ensure their survival. Moreover, you don't have to worry about that, Severus," he added with a confident smile. "Your talent in potions is your key to the Lord's inner circle. Don't forget that," he said the last part with a spark of excitement in his electric blue eyes. Lucius's words have stayed with him ever since. Severus couldn't count the number of times those words had proved true and saved his life years later. Thankfully, the part where he would have to look out for Lucius had proven unnecessary so far. He had never needed to suspect Lucius. The wizard had never tried to hurt him. Even after Severus became the most trusted agent of Lord Voldemort, as Lucius had predicted, he stayed the same and was proud of him. They had both benefited from the time they spent in each other's company. Severus looked at the clock wall and stared slowly, stirring the gurgling purple liquid in his cauldron for times clockwise then for times anti-clockwise. He started to think that he might be closer to seeing some results from the modifications he had made to the experimental potion. Lucius wasn't the only one who he had grown to admire even more during the months. Narcissus had left a mark of her own on his heart. Severus could clearly remember the day Lucius had invited him to his sumptuous manor for the first time and introduced him to his wife. Narcissus had welcomed him with the warmth he didn't expect from the heiress of the House of Black. Severus had heard the rumors about the unfortunate fate of the older sister, Andromeda Black, who eloped with a muggle. The story goes that her purist's parents went as far as to erase her from the family records to clear their name from blood treason. At the entrance, he had braced himself for another cold glare and a show of pureblood supremacy. Instead, he was met with the warmest eyes on a woman and an authentic smile. "Severus," she called excitedly as she got up from the sofa to greet them. "Lucius told me he had recognized you in the ceremony the other day. Why didn't you stop by earlier?" she said. She spoke in a gentle, lustrous, and strangely familiar voice. Severus recognized it from his first year at Hogwarts. A furtive image of a strict girl with very long and dark hair floated to the surface of memory. She was tall and dressed in the black and green robes of the Slytherin house. Her badge of prefect glistened brightly in the dimly lit corridors leading to the dungeons. Her voice hadn't changed much, he thought, except perhaps for the fact that it had lost its sharp edge and the authoritative tone that was her signature as a prefect. Back then, Narcissus was merciless with troublemakers and got them tons of detentions with professors. Some would have argued that she was heartless and arrogant, but he had never had a problem with her methods. He was certain that she didn't notice him at all. As a child he was so quiet he might as well have been a shadow among those who roamed the castle. Actually, he was surprised that she had recognized him at all. She was clearly excited to see him and perhaps a little too familiar. Her tall feminine figure got closer and he found himself in her arms. The unexpected gesture took him by surprise. His brain froze momentarily and he had forgotten to breathe. He stared ahead, unable to utter a syllable. When she withdrew and looked at him apologetically, her cheeks were ever so slightly pink. She looked at her husband, a silent question in her eyes. Lucius shrugged nonchalantly. Then she looked back at him. "You don't remember me at all, do you?" she said, a little disappointed. Apparently, he couldn't hide his surprise, because she broke a little snort. "Don't worry about it. Of course, you wouldn't remember, it was a long time ago and you were just 11, Lucius and I were in our final year, right love?" she said, addressing her husband, who sat on the sofa and crossed his legs elegantly. The image reminded Severus of a king on his high throne. The intensity of her gaze brought his eyes back to her warm smile. She gestured for him to follow her and sit down next to her on the sofa, while she materialized a trail of delicacies and wine. From that day onward, she had been the best thing that happened to him besides working with Lucius. Over the months, she conveyed to him that he could count on the fact that he would always have a place to call home and an attentive ear to rely on at their side. She had always been more than civil to him and accepted him as a close friend of Lucius's and treated him like a guest of honor each time he visited. Back then, Lucius and Narcissus were in their first 8 years together, and Severus had wondered at the bond that united them. More than once, he had caught himself wishing he could, one day, have the same thing with someone. Inside the security of their home, Lucius and Narcissus looked completely different from their arrogant exterior. While watching their lovey-dovey interactions, one could easily forget that they were both honed Death Eaters. Severus had been surprised at the amount of love and laughter that existed in the home of these two purebloods. Narcissus was a kind and admirable woman. Even Severus couldn't stay indifferent to her attentive care, smart retorts, and sophisticated manners. When she learned about his long-lost love, she empathized with him and tried to mend his broken heart. It was a futile attempt, but he appreciated the intention. Even though she suspected as much, she never stopped trying. First, she practically begged him to become their son's godfather, and Lucius welcomed the idea. Severus was dumbfounded and a little scared of the implications. No one had ever formulated the wish to make him, of all people, part of their family. And he didn't trust himself to be a good example for any child. However, the proud parents didn't give him much of a choice in the matter. Narcissus had insisted that, for the last months they had known each other, he had been an exemplary acquaintance and had gained the right to be the best friend of the family. She said that she wouldn't trust anyone else with her son's future. Severus was moved beyond words and had finally accepted this duty that would bind him forever to the Malfoy family. Then, one fine evening at dinner, Narcissus urged her husband to find him a partner. "Or more," he retorted with a smirk. Severus almost choked on his steak, causing his hosts to burst into laughter. But seeing that the poor wizard was prey to an uncontrollable fit of coughs and couldn't breathe properly, Narcissus bounced from her seat at the other end of the large table to gently rub his back. "Severus, are you all right? Can you breathe?" she asked softly, her concerned eye scanning his shaking form. Lucius quickly performed a soothing charm from his place. When he was finally able to breathe properly, Severus leaned back in his chair and tried to formulate the words. "Hum, yeah, I'm all right." "Hum," answered the younger wizard with a strained voice. "Thanks," he added quickly when he felt her hands still rubbing his back and shoulders in big circular and comforting motions. He felt his face going crimson, and he was thankful that it looked like it was caused by his recent effort to not die. He stole a glance at Lucius to distract himself from the caring feminine presence which was uncomfortably too close. "Thanks for saving my lungs, Lucius. But, for Merlin's sake, refrain from saying embarrassing things about me in front of Lady Malfoy. Please," he said, pleading. "Severus, please, just call me Narcissus." "You make me feel old," she retorted with false exasperation, before going back to her place. Narcissus exuded so much of the aristocratic lure that even after almost a year of knowing her, Severus couldn't bring himself to call her by her first name. The couple exchanged mischievous grins and went right back to plotting his love life with outrageous suggestions. Severus sighed and let it slide. Deep down, he was glad to be among people who were concerned with his well-being and who were so excited to help. But a lover? Really? He wasn't certain that was a good time at all, or any other time for that matter. His thoughts drifted to the one and only person who had mattered, and his mind showed him the angry face of Lily Evans in her Gryffindor uniform, telling him that she didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. He clamped his eyes shut against the emotional flashback and tried to even his breathing. All that talk about women and love triggered deep emotional wounds from his past. But his hosts didn't know how his heart was bruised, they merely brushed it off as shyness. He didn't blame them. He never let anyone into the deepest recesses of his heart. Narcissus and Lucius teased him about his exaggerated response to the idea of having a girlfriend all evening, and had a good laugh at his expense. But he didn't mind their amusement, he knew they were only trying to take his mind away from the coming big wedding in town. A sounding buzz woke him from his daze. The alarm spell that he had cast on the potion to notify him when it was ready sounded in the little dark lab. It tore him away from the vivid memory. He brought his awareness back to the present, he had no time to dwell over the past today. The potion took a bright coppery color, and it was almost ready. Severus still had to experiment with it before presenting it to the Dark Lord. He carefully poured a small amount of the potion into a vial and secured it in his special pocket under his frock coat. With a flicker of his wand, he materialized the black robes on his shoulders and walked outside of the lab. Something to distract him from his gloomy thoughts. He blamed himself for too many. He was thankful to have something to distract him from his gloomy thoughts. He blamed himself for too many wrong choices in his life, most of which happened a long time ago, but he could still feel the despair that resulted from them. However, not all of his misfortunes were his doings. Like the day James Potter made Lily his wife and burned his last hope, and condemned him to his nightmares. Enough, he thought as he locked his door and sped up on the empty street. For now, he had work to do. He will think about it another time.